Hi guys, this is the second part of our project integration management knowledge area. Now in the first part we have discussed regarding the introduction of this particular knowledge area. What are we going to learn and what are the processes, what are the activities, what are the tasks that fall under this knowledge area. We have also discussed how the responsibility of the project manager is of paramount in this particular knowledge area compared to the other ones. Okay, so if you have not gone through the first part of this video, which is around 15 to 17 minutes, so I request you to go back and see that video, and the link will be there in the description as well as in the comment of this video. So just go back and see that video, and then you can continue with this part 2 of the video. Then the things will be more coherent for you. Okay, so let's start the part 2 of this video, which is we will discuss today we will discuss the first process of this knowledge area, which is develop project charter. Now we have mentioned that develop project charter process comes under the process group initiation. Fine. We need to understand, before discussing this process, we need to understand why this particular process comes under initiating process group. For that matter, any process, before we learn any process, before we go to understand any process, the first thing we need to understand why that one particular process comes under a particular process group and why a particular process is kept under a particular knowledge area. The logical division and the physical divisions of the processes, it's very much necessary to understand before you are going to completely understand the whole process. Now let's discuss why develop project charter is kept under the process group initiating. That's because develop project charter is part of initiating the project. Okay. Until and unless we have an approved project charter at our hand, we cannot start our planning of the project, right? So there are few activities which needs to be done before we start the project. Those activities are initiating the project, that is required for starting the project. One of that activities, one of the process is develop the project charter, and that's why it's kept under initiating process group. Okay. Now we'll discuss what are the things that we will do under develop project charter. We will discuss why a project manager is required to be involved while developing the project charter. We'll discuss what are inside this charter of ours. Okay, we'll discuss how a charter is different from a contract, and we'll also discuss the different ITTOs, that is inputs, tools and techniques and outputs of this particular process. So let's move forward. Fine. In this slide we have discussed key features, some of the key features related to the project charter. So the first point we have discussed here, it's approved by sponsor or initiator. So before even discussing who approves the charter, let's discuss this: who initiates a project. We need to understand who initiates a project, in what context a project can be initiated. Okay, what are the requirements of that organization, or what are the criteria for which a organization goes ahead to take some new endeavors. Okay, so the context for initiating a project may be different perspectives, different reasons. Like it may be related to strategic changes, business changes. It may be related to customer requirement. There might be some government policies or regulation stuffs which an organization needs to adhere to, and for that purpose projects can be initiated. And then there might be many other factors like that. Okay, it might be some internal restructuring at the organization itself, right? So we have a different video of around 2 minutes, just an animated video to show the different context of the project charter. You can watch that video as well. Again, links will be there in the comment section. Fine. So there are multiple reasons why a project being initiated. Now we need to understand who initiates the projects. Is it someone from inside a project team? Is it from the functional managers? Is it from the line managers? Okay. Is it from some particular department? Right. So the project can be initiated by anyone. Okay. By anyone I mean anyone, especially comparatively in the higher management especially. Okay. So suppose some requirement is there regarding some customer or some policy related requirement or some internal changes to the organization itself. Okay. So request can go to higher management, and project can be initiated by anyone from top of from CEO to portfolio manager to program manager, right? And anyone can initiate the project, and anyone can act as a sponsor to the project. Right? But one thing is sure, that the project team who is going to perform the project, who is going to execute the project, the initiator or sponsor is always an outside entity of that project group. Fine. So that's where basically anyone from management, anyone who has the authority in the organization can initiate a project or can sponsor a project, right? And after sponsoring or initiating, the final approval also is done by that entity. Okay, so final approval for a project charter is done either by the sponsor of the project or the initiator of the project. Please remember this: the initiator and the sponsor may be two different entities. Okay. Suppose the project is initiated from one of the department in the organization, but the project is sponsored by another manager of the another manager in a different department of the organization. That's quite possible. Then the second point we have mentioned, which is an important point here, it formally initiates the project. It means the project charter. Okay. Now this is a very concrete rule, this is a very thumb rule, until and unless the project charter is approved, until and unless the project manager have an approved charter at his or her hand, the project is not formally initialized. Okay? The project is not formally initiated. Fine. So the main responsibility, the main criteria of project being initiated is that the project charter has to be formally approved. It authorizes project manager to use organization's resources. True. Now suppose you are a project manager in your organization, and you have been asked to undertake some project. Okay. Now until and unless you have a formal go ahead that yes, you can start working on the project, yes, you can use our organization's resources, you can use financial resources, you can use human resources, you can use every other possible resources, whatever you need. If you don't have any formal go ahead like that, as a project manager, you will not be used that resources. Right? Basically, officially, you are not authorized to use that resources until and unless you have a formal go ahead to conduct the project. And that formal go ahead is provided by an authorized project charter. Fine. So these first 3 points are interrelated kind of. Okay. So the flow is like that: the project charter is developed, then it's approved. Once it's approved, it initiates the project finally, and only after the project charter is approved and project is initiated, then only project manager can use organization's resources to start planning and executing the process. The fourth point we have mentioned is project manager can help sponsor to develop the charter. Now, Now, the project charter is the responsibility of the project charter, the responsibility what lies inside a project charter, the responsibility of authorizing the, approving the charter, responsibility of developing the charter. Everything lies on the sponsor of the project. Okay. Everything lies on the sponsor or initiator of the project. Having said that, while composing the project charter, sponsor can take help of the project manager. That means even when the charter is being developed, the organization can assign a project manager for the future project, and that project manager, with all his experience of managing different projects, with all his networking capability, with all his interpersonal skills, etc., with all his insights to work in various projects, he can help the sponsor developing the charter. Okay, and it's quite recommended that the project manager is involved as early as possible in this process, right? And why is that so? Why we would like to involve project manager from the beginning of the process, from the beginning of composing the project charter until the project charter is authorized, approved. That's because throughout the project planning, throughout the project execution, and throughout the whole life cycle of the project, project manager and the project management team, and as well as the project team itself, they are going to refer the project charter again and again for multiple reasons. Okay, suppose in future there is some confusion related to the goal of the project. In future there is some confusion regarding the conflict of interest of some stakeholders, or in future there is some confusion regarding the high level agreements, whatever is mentioned in the charter. So for this purpose, this kind of issues, this kind of clarifications required, the project team, the project manager and the project management team always refer back to the charter. Fine. So at that moment, if there are some clarifications required, and suppose the project manager was not involved earlier in the development of the project charter, what will happen is every time some clarification is required, every time some minute things to be understood, the project team has to go back to the charter and go back to sponsor or initiator for more understanding, right? So if the project manager is involved from the beginning itself, this will affect the whole planning, this will affect the whole execution part in a much more positive way. Okay, and there will be a very smooth link between the charter and the team, the link being the project manager. Okay, that's why it's always recommended that the project manager is always assigned to the project as early as possible, and he or she should be involved in a very detailed way while composing the project charter. It is the bridge between the project and the organization. Yes, project charter is the bridge between the higher management of the organization, the strategies of the organization, the overall vision of the organization, and the project team. Okay, so now let's try to understand this. When a project team is working in the project, it basically more concentrated on the management plan. Its concentration is on the various execution that's to be recorded for the project, etc., right? So sometimes our vision and our concentration range tend to become a bit on a silo of the project, right? So but it's always recommended that the project team always keeps in mind the overall organization perspective as well. At least the project manager, excuse me, at least the project manager takes the vision of the organization along with him while he is managing the project, right? And which is the artifact, which is the entity which reflect the overall vision of the project organization? That is nothing but our project charter. Okay, So that's why we are stating that the project charter is kind of a bridge between the project team and the vision and strategy and overall goal of the organization. Now the last point we have mentioned is it's not a contract. That means project charter is not a contract. Now why project charter is not a contract? That's because project charter is not a legal document. Okay? It doesn't bind any two parties legally. Okay? It's just an internal authorization to the project manager to go ahead with executing a project. So the project charter doesn't, apart from stating some financial internal financial benefits and overall limit of the project, etc. Apart from that, the project charter doesn't contain monetary binding, monetary, promises, etc. Right? On the other hand, whenever we are talking about a contract, the contract will have legal bindings. The contract will have money involved in case the contract is not fulfilled, or in case the contract could not produce the result which was intended for, etc., etc. So basically contract includes the monetary binding part plus the legal binding, right? And the most important part is contract is involved when the initiator of the project and the project executing organizations are two different organizations. Okay, suppose XYZ is a company and ABC is a company, and XYZ has initiated the project and they have outsourced the project, or they have given the project execution responsibilities to ABC. Fine. So in that case, there should be a legal binding between XYZ and ABC to decide what will be the repercussions of various criteria or various conditions going forward. So in that case, the project charter will be replaced by the contract itself. Okay, so it's a thing to be noted that whenever the project initiator of the project and the execution of the project, everything is going under the same organization, a project's charter is sufficed. Okay, but whenever there are two different organizations are involved, whenever some legal consequences are involved, it's the contract which come into the picture. So that's all about some key features, some understanding related to the project charter. Okay, so there are many other things which we need to understand from the perspective of a project charter. So what's recommended to understand is you can go ahead and whenever you find some project charter, actual project charter, you can see it. What are the things that they are inside? Okay. And if it's possible, you can talk to the management of your organization, or you can talk to the sponsor, or you can talk to your manager itself and try to understand how in your organization how the process is. Okay, how the development of the charter goes on in your organization, who are the key persons responsible for developing the charter in your organization, and you can also understand what are the ways that what are the steps that those are taken differently than the PMI suggested step. Okay, so in your organization, is the project manager involved from the time when the starter is being composed, or in your organization is it the case that the project manager is assigned only when the project is going to be started? So if you are aware what's going on in your organization, or if you're aware what's going on in some other organization, then things will be more clear to you. Okay. Having said that, let's move to our next slide. Fine. So here we have mentioned the inputs, the tools and techniques, and the outputs of this process. It is nothing but the ITTOs. Fine. Since this is the first process we are talking about of all the knowledge areas, I want to iterate one thing here. going to share one of my experience here. Look, many people by heart this ITTOs of the processes. Okay, many people by heart these ITTOs of the processes because there will be a few questions on the ITTOs. When I say few, it ranges from say 3 to 4 to maybe 8 to 10. Fine. So there is a practice going around that people by heart these ITTOs. From my personal experience, from the experience of other PMP exam taker who has successfully have got the certification cleared in the first attempt itself, I suggest that you should not by heart ITTOs. The reason being, there are 49 processes as a whole in PMP. Okay, and you can see this is only one process, and only one process has around your 7 to 8 ITTOs, right? So just imagine, just multiply 49 with some 7 to 10 or something. So we have that many ITTOs in the whole PMP. So it's not worth remembering that, by hearting that without understanding. So what I suggest is, these ITTOs are very logical thing, it's a very logical thing. If you know the flow of the process, if you know what's going on inside the process, okay, if you know some of the common things like what does that mean, like OPA, EF, what does expert judgment means, right? So if you understand the things logically, ITTOs will come to you. ITTOs will be quite obvious to you, and it will not record to be by heart. Fine. And another point, once you are done with all the knowledge areas, once you are done with understanding whole concept of PMP, so things will be more clear to you. So if today we are discussing the ITTOs of develop project charter, some of the points, some of the inputs, some of the tools and techniques might not be very much clear to you. Okay, that's quite obvious, that's quite natural. But once you understand all the processes, once you can link between the processes, these things will be much more clear. Okay? And these things will be much more understandable, and it will seem more logical to you. Fine. So let's see what are the inputs that's required while we are performing this particular process. So the first point we have mentioned is the business documents. Fine. So what kind of business documents we need to start this process? We need the business case, and we need the benefit management plan. So what is a business case? The business case is a statement where you will understand, by going through the statement, you will understand why a particular organization or why the organization is initiating this particular project. Okay. It's mentioned there, if this project is fulfilled, what are the long-term or short-term goals? What are the achievement that will be, what are the goals that will be achieved by the organization? Okay, or what is the context in which this project is initiated? Okay, so all those kind of things will be mentioned in the business case document, right? So basically, this is a kind of an executive summary why you are starting the project itself. Then benefit management plan. So if some organization, if some company is starting a project, there have to be some benefits that it's expecting out of the project, right? Otherwise we will not start any project if we don't see any benefit. The benefit might not be economic, it can be social, it can be environmental, it can be some as we already mentioned, some government regulations and policy related. So any kind of benefit, fine, but that benefit, how it's going to invest in the project and how the benefit will help the organization as a whole or the department as a whole, it has to be there. The proper management plan has to be there, which is the content of this benefit management plan. Fine. Then the second point is agreement. So agreement is a very crucial input to start the project, because to start any endeavor you have to have some agreements from higher management, you have to have some agreement from some key stakeholders, right? So suppose for an example, you are going to initiate some projects which need around $100 million of finance, right? So as an initiator of the project, you have to have some agreement with the higher management of the organization that they are willing to invest this much amount of money. They are willing to invest in this project, right? Or there might be some other agreements as well, that the management is going to give all kind of supports that's required from inside the organization or the outside the organization, so etc, etc. So basically what I'm trying to explain here is all the agreements which is already done, verbally or written or anything, those agreements is going to be some input for your developed project charter, right? So for an example, say whenever we're talking about some contract or something, right? So before actually starting writing the contract, you already might be having some oral agreement or verbal agreement with some other party, right? So those agreements will work as an input to the process. Same goes here as well. The agreements, whatever we have already discussed, and the points we have already agreed to, so those will come as an input to your writing the charter, right? Then two of the last inputs are enterprise environmental factors and organizational process assets. So what is enterprise environmental factors? Enterprise environmental factors are those factors which will impact your project, which will impact whatever you are doing, right? So say the marketplace condition, how is the market right now? So that is an enterprise environmental factor, because how is the market right now, whether it's going up or whether it's going down, it's definitely going to impact your project in some way or another, right? Suppose you are you are in a construction industry, you are going to start a new project, right? You're going to start some new project. So you need to understand what are the market of the raw material, right? Suppose if your raw material prices are going up, you might take a different decision. If your raw material prices are going down, you might take a different decision. So these are the factors that's going to impact your project, right? But the main point here is these are the factors that you don't have any control on, okay? These are the factors that the project itself doesn't have any control on. So these are called enterprise environmental factors. And what are organizational process assets? Organizational process assets are the different kind of assets you have in your organization, okay? You either have to follow those assets mandatorily while you are executing the project, or there are some templates and guidelines and recommendations and lessons learned, etc., which you can use in your project, right? So basically these are the assets which you can either use or you are mandated to use. So these things are called organizational process assets, right? Just remember this thing while going further in different processes, in different knowledge areas. These two inputs, EEF, that is enterprise environmental factors, and OPA, organizational process assets, these two will be inputs for almost all the processes we have, okay? Fine. Next comes the tools and techniques. So what are the tools and techniques? While developing the project charter, what are some of the tools and techniques are like expert judgment, then data gathering, then interpersonal team skills, etc. So why we need expert judgment? Look, whenever we are developing the charter, the project itself, whatever is going to be initiated, is a completely new project, right? Then what may happen, and there might be many unforeseen things which we need to perceive perceive beforehand, okay? Now expert judgment includes the decisions you are going to take, the points you are going to consider based on your experience, or based on anyone you can rope into, so basically, look, expert judgment is kind of an obvious kind of tools or techniques which we are going to use, right? Okay, so expert judgment, you have to use the expert judgment from your team or any other team you can rope into, or you can go to the higher management natural as well to take their judgment, etc. Fine. So so this is the point. And data gathering means while you are developing the project charter, you need various kind of data, you need various kind of data, you need various kind of ideas, and you need various kind of points. So to gather this data, you can either use brainstorming or focus groups or interviews. Okay? So what is a brainstorming technique? Brainstorming technique is nothing but suppose you have a group of people and you are trying to generate as many ideas as you can, okay, without judging any idea. Suppose there are 10 people in a room, you have started a brainstorming session, so you just encourage everyone to come up with their ideas. Just put on the table, okay, and no ideas needs to be judged at that moment. The basic goal of a brainstorming session is to create as many ideas as possible. What is focus groups? So focus groups are, suppose you are trying to initiate some project in some particular area, okay, and now if you need some particular information, you are going to go to some specific group of people who are aware of those information, who have this information, okay, or who can give some insights to you, right? So if you focus on such group of people, they are called the focus groups. Especially you can call many focus groups into the table, and you can discuss things. You can call them into workshops, you can have individual meetings to the groups, etc., etc., right? Basically, the purpose of the focus groups is they are going to give you some insights which you will not be able to generate from yourself or other people or other entities. Okay. Then interviews. Yes, obviously, we have to look, these tools and techniques. It's not mandatory that you have to use all of them. Okay, whatever is suitable for you, whatever is suitable for your project, whatever is suitable for your organization, you can go ahead with this. And this is not an exhaustive list. You can use some other tools and techniques as well. Okay, but these are some of the things which are more frequently used in the process. Then comes interpersonal and team skills. Yes, whenever we are going to arrange some interviews, whenever we are going to arrange some meetings, whenever we are going to facilitate some workshops, etc., etc., and whenever as a project manager or an initiator of the project, you are trying to get more and more information, as much information as you require for various strata of society, from various type of people from various organizations as per your requirement. So you have to have some conflict management skill, you have to have some facilitation skill, you have to have some meeting management skill. You can use other skills as well which are not mentioned here, right? Suppose you are a very good networking person, you have a very good networking skill, that also you can utilize here to develop the project charter, or to the need to get the information to develop whatever is required as part of the project charter. Excuse me. So now just remember one thing, the writing down the words in the charter is only a small part of developing the project charter. The main parts being, you have to understand how you want to initiate the project, you have to understand the long-term vision of the project, you have to understand what are the key features and what are the key points that you are going to put down in the charter. Okay, you have to think through what are the financial pointers that you are going to mention, and what are the things that you are going to exclude from the charter, right? So all these stuffs, all this rigorous exercise of gathering the data, of deciding what to put, what not to put, and and many other things from your experience. These are the major part of developing the charter. So once you're done with all the stuff, then just writing down the charter is the last, and it's very limited part of the whole process. Fine. Why I'm mentioning this point is, whenever we think about developing or composing the project charter, we always think about just the process of writing the charter and getting it approved. Okay, but we have to also keep in mind the efforts go into the whole process of going to that point. Fine. Now, what are the outputs of this process? So obviously one of the output is the project charter itself. That's an obvious thing because we are developing that particular document, that artifact, so that will be a part of the output. Another output to be considered is the assumption log. Okay. Now we have already discussed, while developing the project charter, while you are at that phase, many of the things will not be clear to you. Many of the information will not be readily available at that point of time. So what we have to do as a project sponsor and the project manager or any other person who is involved in this developing process, we need to assume a few things. Okay? We need to assume a few things, and whatever assumptions is being made, we have to document in our assumption log. Now just keep this point in mind for today, for tomorrow, for entire time you are going to prepare for PMP. Nothing that is done as part of project management go undocumented. Okay, anything you do, everything you find, it's always suggested to document somewhere. You find some issue, document in the issue log. You are making some assumption, document in the assumption log. You are finding some risk, keep it in the risk register. You want some change to be done, go with your change management plan and change register. Okay, so nothing goes undocumented and nothing should go undocumented in project management. So that's why the assumption log starts from the very beginning of the project, because we have to do some assumptions for sure. Look, even when we are involved with some small changes also, suppose for an IT project, if we are going to change some configuration or something like that, in the high level document itself, HLD itself, we usually put a few assumptions. Okay, because it's not practical that each and every point will be formally agreed upon, right? So we have to make some assumptions. So we used to keep those in high level document, etc. as well, right? Same way, we have to keep one assumption log for our project as well. And this assumption log document will be referred back by many of the processes in other knowledge areas, right? For example, when we are planning for risk, the risk management plan process also will see what's there in the assumption log. Fine, because some of the assumptions you had made at the beginning of the project may create some new risk, right? So that is all about the assumption log here. Fine. Whenever we go ahead with our other parts of videos and other processes, we will not go in details in this assumption log. And if you have any doubt regarding this assumption log or any of the inputs, outputs, tools and techniques, if you want me to clarify more on some specific topic here, you can just put your comments in the comment section of the video, and we will definitely get back to you with some new video or some one-to-one consultation. Right? Let's go ahead now. Let's see what else we have in this process. So in this slide, we are going to discuss, excuse me. In these slides, we are going to discuss what are exactly there inside the project charter. Okay. till now we have discussed how we are going to develop it, what are the things that we need to make sure while developing, etc. Once the project charter is developed, what will be the things that will be there inside the project charter? There will be the project purpose. That means why we are initiating the project. What benefits this project is going to give to the organization. Okay, what should be the output of this project and how it is in line with the strategy of the organization. Now, if you remember, we have discussed in our last slide that business case is an input to the development process, right? So the content from this business case inspires us to write this project purpose in the then measurable project objectives and related success criteria. So in the charter itself, you have to clearly mention what are the things that you are trying to achieve by the project. Now in this case, I mean, we mean to say that what are the measurable outcome that the project is going to give you. You are going to suppose it's a construction of a building project. Okay, so in the charter you can specify what will be the dimensions of the construction. Suppose you need this square feet of building, you need 10 floors in the building, you need this, that. Okay, so basically whatever things you can measure, those measurable objectives needs to be there in the project, right? Or else you can also say that this project should give us a benefit of $1 million, right? So anything measurable objectives. So, and now the second question comes, why these measurable objectives needs to be there in the charter? That's because once you are done with your project, you need to understand that whether your project is being successful or not, right? So if you put all the subjective details in the charter, you might not be able to include, you might not be able to conclude whether your project is has been successful or not. So that's why we have to specifically mention the success criteria of the project. Okay, that means if this project achieve this much outcome, that will be successful. If this project ultimately achieves to complete this building in this many days, suppose, we will say that this project successful. So you have to mention this success criteria very objectively in the charter. High-level requirements. Yes, all the requirements, detailed requirements will not be available in the while you are developing the charter, but whatever high-level requirements you have on basis of what you are going to start or initiate the project, those high-level requirements need to be mentioned in the project charter. Then comes high-level project description, boundaries, and key deliverables. Okay, so why we need boundaries here? Why we need to specifically mention the boundaries in the project charter? That's because whenever we are going to plan the project, whenever we are going to plan the scope of the project, okay, we have to have a clear idea what this project is about and what this project is not about. Okay, so you have to know what is inside the boundaries of the project. You also need to be very sure about what are the things that lies outside the boundary of the project. Okay, that will help you managing the scope, that will help you planning the scope, and that will help you to resolve any conflict that arises for the scope of the project in future. Then overall project risk, yes, the risk which you foresee, at the beginning of the project, you have to mention all those high-level risks here. Then summary milestone schedule. Now the thing is, like, suppose your project is a 5-year project. Okay, so you just cannot just mention that at the end of 5 years I need this and that's it. Okay, if you do that and if you don't have intermediate milestone while the project is being executed, you will not be able to measure whether you are in line with your expectations, whether you are in line with meeting the ultimate goal of 5 years or not. Okay, so that's why it's very much necessary to mention what are the milestones that you can, what are the milestones that you need to achieve while you are executing the process. So for example, you can say that after 1 year I need this deliverable, after 2 years as the project should be able to deliver this part, and so on and on and on. Okay, so this summary milestone schedule will act as an input or as a guidance to your further scope management or maintaining the scope or controlling the scope. Fine. So this is the input, the points which we are mentioning right now, which should be there inside the project charter. Each and every point acts as some input to the other knowledge area processes like cost and scope, etc., etc. Then there will be pre-approved financial resources. Yes, as we already mentioned, that you have to have some guarantee from the top management that they are going to invest, they are going to help you financially to execute the project. Fine. So before starting the project itself, you should have some pre-approved financial resources, right? So that means they are okay to, at least $1 million is approved now, and suppose the next $2 million will be approved once the project is initiated, or once the project is project planning is completed. So many different points and criteria you can mention as you wish. Fine. But it's always recommended, and it's the usual practice, that the project charter itself mentioned what is your pre-approved amount of financial resources. Then key stakeholder list. Yes, whenever whenever you are developing the charter, in fact, whenever you are just conceptualize the project also, there will be some key stakeholder, there will be some obvious key stakeholders, and those stakeholders names or details should be mentioned in the project charter. For an example, your company CEO may be one of the stakeholder, right? Or for an example, one of the functional managers which actually conceptualized this project, maybe another stakeholder, right? Or suppose your project is related to some construction, any other project. We are talking too much about construction now. Suppose your project is an IT project, fine, and there are some legal implication of that product you are going to produce. So there might be some government entities or regulatory bodies which may be a key stakeholder. So those kind of key stakeholders which can be identified at the initiation of the project itself, or during the development of the charter itself, those need to be mentioned in the project charter itself. And again, like the other points whatever we have mentioned, this will also act as an input to our other processes, like identify stakeholders, etc. Okay. Then we have project approval requirements. What constitutes project success? Who decides the project is successful, and who signs off the project? So basically the authority of the project, who has the authority to close the project, who has the authority to cancel the project, right? So all these authorities needs to be clearly mentioned in the project charter. This will help you in conflict management going forward, okay? Or this will help you as a project manager to take some decisions which is not on your hand, right? So those approval requirements, and what is the and from which entity you need the approval, all those things should be clearly mentioned in the project charter. Then project exit criteria. Now this is one of the very important part here in charter, and this exit criteria related information related to exit criteria you will get only in the project charter. Okay. Suppose your project is not doing well and you are not in line at all with cost or schedule, etc. during the execution of the project, and then the stakeholders are also not very happy, and they don't want to they don't basically want the project anymore. Okay. And as a project manager, you also think that it's not worthy of keep executing the project. right? So because it's not, anyways, it's not going to achieve its goals, etc. So in that case, if you want to cancel the project or close the project, what you have to do? So you have to go back to the charter, you have to see this project exit criteria, and you have to take help from the sponsor, and depending upon this exit criteria and depending upon who needs to approve the cancellation or closing of the project can be a decision can be taken for closing the project, right? So that project exit criteria, that concrete things needs to be clearly mentioned in the developed project charter. Okay. So these are some of the key things, which should be there in a good project charter, and there are many other things. There are many other points which can be mentioned in the charter. That always depends upon the organization. Suppose for your organization, you may already have some template. You may already have some guidelines. Okay, so you have to follow those as well. So those kind of organizational process assets impacts how your project charter will be, basically, right? So this is not an exhaustive list of things that needs to be there. There might be many other things, and many of the points which we have mentioned here may not be there in the project charter as well. Okay, so it's completely dependent upon the organization. It's completely dependent upon the project situations, etc. Okay. So that's all we have for the first process of the integration management knowledge area, which is develop project charter. The second process, we have develop project management plan, which we will discuss in detail in our next part of the video, which will be the part 3 video. Okay, so we are going to stop here right now. What I request you guys is go through this video, then go through the other videos we have. We have some 2 minutes videos as well, like if you are confused between organizational process assets and enterprise environmental factors. So we have some animation videos in our channel. You can go, you can see that as well. Then we have some other confusing terms. There are many confusing terms in PMP, which it's not quite obvious. So we have some small videos. We have some other 20 minutes, 30 minutes videos as well. So go through those videos and this as well. And if you have any kind of confusion, if you have any clarification required, and any other help you want from us, the certification support, just put your message in the comment section of any of our videos, and we'll get back to you one-to-one if it's a one-off question. And if we get many concern from many people, like same concern, then we may produce another video to clarify those as well, right? So that's all from the part 2 of this knowledge area. See you all in the third part of the knowledge area, which will extensively, in detail, we will discuss develop project management plan. So until then, bye bye.